Hey, what's up, guys? So I really quick want to make a video about, I've kind of done this on Facebook before, but a few of what I think are the biggest benefits of competition shooting in relation to our defensive shooting, practical shooting, combative shooting, tactical shooting, whatever you want to call it, and kind of ones that aren't, the typically, said ones. I've kind of touched on this on Facebook before, but I want to preface that, one, these aren't in any particular order, but I also want to preface it by saying that you don't just show up to matches and shoot matches and then acquire these things. They have to be wrought out in training, which takes the introspection from the competitions. I mean, obviously you got to take video, kind of study yourself, take critiques from yourself, take critiques from other, especially better shooters, that sort of stuff. So kind of started off on the first one is good enough. So I've done a video on my Bastion Black Performance Facebook, so if you want to, go check it out on that. But good enough is dealing with what we actually need for a sight picture to make a hit on a given target at a given distance is hugely important. And so in that particular video, I demonstrated that I can take my sights off, and I don't need a rear sight to make A-zone, to make alpha hits out to 25 yards with my competition gun, which is a 5.25 gun. My carry gun's a 4.5, so I mean, yeah, slightly better. But I don't even need the rear sight at all on a full-facing target at 25 yards. So what that means is, and this is a hugely relevant thing in competition, is you get to where you have to, and you start to associate certain distances, certain targets with a certain necessary sight picture. So for example, if it's closer than 5 yards or maybe closer than 3 yards, you're probably not even going to actually use the sights. You're going to reference the gun in the hand. So I mean, I have my position and I reference the gun itself, but that's all I'm going to use to make my hits. Out to 5, 7, 10 yards, I just need a little bit of front sight tip and I'm good to go. 10 to 15, now I need the front sight tip, maybe a little bit of rear sight. Maybe I don't need the whole rear sight. I just need to acknowledge the fact that I have a rear sight, so I have a little bit of lateral assistance with it. And then 15 out to 25, and especially 25 plus. Then I'm going to have to align both my front and rear sights and have to do a good job with my grip and my trigger press on that to make hits. And so why that's relevant, in practical shooting and also in the defensive side of things, is that you don't want to take any more time than is absolutely necessary. And so from the defensive side of things, obviously the closer the distance, the faster everything has to be, because the distance can be closed that much quicker. Whereas the distance opens up, then we have a little bit more time. So what that means is, for me, in a defensive type of scenario, combative scenario, whatever you want to call it, I know if I'm at, say, 5 yards, if I get the front sight tip on something, on a guy, squeeze the trigger, I'm going to get a hit. Maybe it's not exactly what I want, and I need to adjust a little bit, but if I put the front sight tip on the guy, I'm getting hits at 5 to 7 yards, and that's for sure. So learning to know with good enough. So the second one is center of mass. So I think we're all familiar with that. We probably all use it, and it's correct, but a lot of people, they only scratch the surface of what that means. So they think, okay, center mass. All right, so if I stand in my anatomical position here, center mass is about right there, kind of xiphoid process. So what that means is that I have the most amount of my body on any given side of that, so that I have a little bit of a buffer zone, but also gives me the best chance to make a hit by putting my sight at that thing at any distance. And that's hugely relevant. That's absolutely correct. But where a lot of people, they haven't discovered this yet, or they haven't heard it yet, or anything like that, is center of mass. What it does mean is center of mass of the target surface available to us. And this is something that we do in competition a lot, that you probably maybe haven't even thought about it this way specifically. But for example, we see this sort of stuff a lot, where you got like a no shoot or a hard cover target or something like that that's covering part of your target, right? So I mean, I have some A zone to work with here, but where's my point of aim going to be? The center of the A zone is about right there. If I put my sight right there, if I'm off a little bit, if I slap hard and my grip's not quite good enough, then I'm going to dump one in the no shoot. So what do we typically do? Well, we typically take center of mass. So I have a little bit of a buffer on the A zone. I'm probably still going to get one A zone hit, hopefully two, but if I go a little bit wild, I'm still going to get a Charlie. I shoot limited, so in major power, that's not super bad, but it also gives me the buffer away from the no shoot. Now, could I take more time and guarantee more of an alpha here? Probably, but now I'm going to be eating up time. So in competition, that's huge, but it also, obviously, time is super relevant in any sort of defensive, combative, tactical, whatever scenario, right? Like if I can get a pretty good hit really fast, I can always get another hit after that, instead of taking my sweet time for something that might not actually end up being any better. And so the same thing goes for, regardless of the target surface area. So if I have a whole full facing target here, center of mass is about right there. So that's where I'm putting my sight. Because that gives me the most amount of leeway with the alpha and Charlie zone to play with there. Or another thing that happens a lot in competition is you have, just a head target right here. So we know that we've got this credit card, A zone in the head. But depending on the distance, I'm not going to stop and take my time to try to hit that A zone in the head basically 99% of the time, because one, it's taking a lot of extra time, but also, especially if the target's been shot a lot, it's a head-only target, so that's the only thing that people are hitting. There's going to be pasters everywhere. You probably, or you might not be able to see the actual perforations of the A zone anyway. So what are you going to do? What do? You put your sight right in the dead center of this. So I know that based on the surface area, I'm probably going to take Bravos, but I might get Alpha on that. But I'm not going to waste any extra time. So we think the same thing with the human body. Let's say I have a guy who's behind a car and all I can see is the head. All right, so I take center mass of the head. I go right for the nose. Same thing if the guy's turned sideways or crouching or something like that. I take the center mass of the target surface that's available to me, and then I go from there. And that's hugely important. Number 3 is dealing with time. And so, I mean, if you're training and you're serious, you probably use a timer and that sort of stuff, which is absolutely correct. And this isn't me being snarky, but until you really go to competitions, and get a little bit nerdy with, recording and doing the numbers and that sort of stuff, you don't have any concept of time. And then when you kind of discover it, your whole concept of time changes. And this is what happened with me, is there's things that are taking place like in the match where I know I slowed down and I took my sweet ass time to get good hits, but on the tape it looks like I was just burning through on there, which is good. Like, you're so conscious of just these unbelievably small amounts of time, which some of it's a little bit too detailed for what I would say the real world, but in competition it matters. But your whole concept of time changes, and you start to see the places where you're losing time, especially target transitions is huge. That's when we talk about in competition shooting all the time, your target transitions. But obviously draw, reloads are huge, and moving into and out of position and shooting on the move are really big, and all of those things matter in the real world as well. So obviously being the fastest out of the holster, on target, is hugely important. Reloads, now in the civilian side of things, they're not particularly relevant. They're not represented defensively, but for cops, for military, for anybody, if you're going to reload, you might as well be good at it. But especially being able to take shots on the move and move myself into and out of position, because it's bound to happen. If you're a law enforcement officer, you're likely to be moving. Suspects moving, you're moving, things like that. You're in a mall or something, there's an active shooter situation. So you're advancing, you're moving, you're not 100% sure where it's going on, and then it happens. So now I've got to take my shots on the move while I move into position. It's not a problem for good competition shooters, because we do that all the time. Like, we move into, we move out of, we take shots on the move where we can save time. And in real life, that's hugely relevant. And the same sort of thing happens overseas a lot, given the types of enemies that we fight. They tend to, when they're scattered, a lot of times they'll hide. They'll either hide to try to escape, or they'll hide to try to ambush, that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of random contact sometimes after major contact, especially in urban environments where you're not 100% sure where the people are. So being able to shoot your way into and out of positions, shoot on the move, and acquire a legitimate shooting position to get your sight picture, basically instantaneously, is obviously humongously important. And the last one is exposure to superior shooters. And so this one I've said before, which is hugely relevant, is you need to know where the ceiling is. So when I first started competition shooting, I had good fundamentals, pretty good shooter, but I just hadn't done any competition shooting, so there was a big learning curve with a lot of that stuff. But go into a match with somebody who can just run the shit out of a gun. I don't know if they can fight, I don't know if they've ever been in a gunfight, maybe they're a huge pussy, I don't know. But somebody who can just absolutely run a gun, and then when you see how high the ceiling really is on strictly firearm skill. So take the Ben Stovers, the Bob Vogels, the Max Michels of the world, people who are just astronomically better than everybody else when it comes to their fundamental shooting ability and that sort of stuff. So seeing where the ceiling really is, and that's really important. It's like they kind of always use the old cliche thing, but until Roger Bannister ran a 4-minute mile, nobody thought you could run a 4-minute mile. They're like, oh, it's too fast, and then he did it. Well, now everybody and their dog does it. Okay, not really, mostly just people from Kenya and stuff like that. But once it gets shown to you as not only possible, but not even really that far from where you are, if you put in the proper training, the proper effort, that's huge. That's hugely important. So again, talking about what's good enough, hugely important. Go check that video out on my Facebook, the channel page, that is. So dealing with center of mass. So center of mass of the target that's available to you, your time. Get nerdy with it, your entire concept of time, and then being exposed to superior shooters, and then also garnering information from them. So remember, guys, only the hits count, and you can never miss fast enough to catch back up.